Welcome back, everyone, to the Aurora Show, and we are going to go into Sagittarius risings today. So, Sagittarius risings are going to be ruled by the planet Jupiter. And in ancient astrology, Jupiter was a co-ruler of both Sagittarius and Pisces. So you're going to get some commonalities, but of course, as I said in the Scorpio rising video, Scorpio was traditionally ruled by Mars, right? And Mars ruled Aries and Scorpio. But then in modern astrology, Pluto became a co-ruler of Scorpio, which it does change the archetype. It does change the kind of undertone, right? And so the same thing is going to be the case between Sagittarius risings and and Pisces risings, because in modern astrology, Neptune is now the modern ruler of Pisces. So again, you're going to get a different flavor, right? Now, but traditionally, Pisces and Sagittarius had a lot of commonalities. And I think that's important to note, right? They're very different, but we can probably see where the commonalities lie, right? So Jupiter, we often associate Jupiter with like blessings and abundance and freedom, which in many ways Jupiter is, right? Jupiter is the spiritual mother. Okay, she's the spiritual mother energy. People can fight me on this. I have written and spoken extensively about the fact that I feel a lot of these archetypes that were given to the planets, because a lot of the times astronomers were naming planets because the astronomer that discovered it kind of would name it, and it tended to be linked to like Greek or Roman mythology. And that's a whole nother conversation because there's kind of a lot of dark energy to those mythologies, but nonetheless. But the problem with that is that astronomers, especially in modern times, aren't necessarily familiar with archetypes and with astrology, which these are two different things, right? They used to be one thing, but now they are two very different things. So they named a lot of these planets after archetypes that were masculine. But when you really understand how these planets work, especially these planet rulerships, it doesn't make sense, right? So Jupiter being masculine makes zero sense to me. Like, it just doesn't make sense to me, right? Neptune being masculine makes even way fucking less sense to me. Because you look at the themes that we're talking about with these planets, right? We're looking at the archetypes. None of it is masculine. Okay, Jupiter being about expansion. Expansion is naturally a feminine quality, right? Like whatever you give to feminine energy, it will expand upon it, right? For instance, a womb, right? The egg that becomes fertilized, right? The feminine womb takes that, expands it, builds upon it, and creates an entirely new human being out of that. That is not a masculine trait. Okay. This is it's one of my qualms with modern astrology. So the idea of expansion, limitlessness, that is a feminine quality. Okay. The primordial essence of creation, which is expansion, is feminine. So I call Jupiter a feminine because she feels feminine to me. There is nothing about her that feels masculine to me. She's a big girl. Okay. Jupiter is the biggest planet in our solar system. She is a big girl. Okay. So when I think about Jupiter, I think about a few things. One is, yes, we're going to get that kind of themes around blessings, right? That Jupiter carries this natural lucky quality to it. But I think that that's a limited perspective, right? Because just because you're a Sagittarius rising, right? Or just because you have a very well-placed Jupiter in your chart doesn't mean you're always going to just experience good luck all the time, right? Now, it can be very lucky, and we'll get to that. But in general, it's not necessarily that Jupiter simply creates luck. I think we have to look at Jupiter being the ruling planet of Sagittarius, and in ancient astrology also ruled Pisces, right? They do share a commonality there, which is trust. Okay? Trust is a commonality that Pisces and Sagittarius share. Sagittarius trusts in life's experiences. Okay, so kind of the mantra of Sagittarius and this flavor of Jupiter is life is one big experience, okay? And we have to trust that every experience that we have is meant for us, basically, right? That things happen the way that they should happen, and that, you know, if something doesn't go right, well, the next time if something goes wrong, the next time it's going to go right, right? Sagittarius has this innate trust in life, okay? And Pisces has this innate trust in the universe itself, like trusting in kind of the divine, if you will, trusting that everything happens in divine timing, everything happens for a higher purpose. They have this deep trust in the universe itself. Sagittarius has a deep trust in life. And this is why they tend to be lucky, okay? They're kind of very type B personalities. They just are like, they have this perspective that everything's just going to work out. And so because they believe that, right, it happens. And so and thus Sagittarius, and if your rulership is your Sag rising and your rulership is Jupiter, you will have this kind of natural trust in life where you just feel like everything's going to work out one way or the other. Right? And it's about belief. So we can say that Sagittarius has a lot to do with what you believe. That is ultimately what shapes your life experience. Now, Jupiter is also about expansion, growth, and because she's a big girl, everything about Jupiter becomes big. But that also means your mistakes become big. They become overblown, right? Your seemingly small problems become really big, right? Everything about your archetype and your life, your story arc becomes big. So you'll see with my celebrity examples of Sag risings, they have this larger than life presence. Like everything in their life, there's a spotlight on. Everything is really big. A little bit similar to our Aries risings, where every house in your chart is in its domicile. So your life seems loud. Okay. And I think there can be a difference here between loud and big, right? Those can be different. Aries risings, your life is loud. Everything you do is loud. Everybody sees it. It's in your face. It's super obvious. Like you can't hide anything really. But with Sag risings, everything about your story arc feels big, right? So that's one thing. And so I feel with Jupiter, and remember, Jupiter's expansion here is calling for, there's a seeking element to Jupiter, right? And in Sagittarius, they are ultimately seeking to find their personal truth. They are seeking to have life experiences and to find their personal truth. They want to find what they believe in. That's very important to them. What they believe in, what they feel is right. There's an ethics to Sagittarius, which is sometimes glossed over, but I think Sagittarius heavy placements, they believe in things very, very strongly. Okay. It gives preacher energy. It gives dogmatic sometimes, right? They believe something so strongly that they will die on that hill. Okay. But what I do love about Sagittarius and the Jupiter energy is once they believe in something, and a lot of it needs to come from lived experience, right? Like Sagittarius archetype is very similar to me to the book The Celestine Prophecy, right? He kind of goes on this quest. He doesn't know what he's seeking, but he's seeking something. He goes on this adventure, which is very Sagittarian, and kind of just follows the syncs, just trusts in each experience as it comes. And throughout that quest, throughout that lived experience, he develops a personal truth. He develops the insights. That is very Sagittarius. Okay, so there is a spiritual component here, but it's not the same as when we get to Pisces risings, which is a much more ethereal spiritual nature, right? So first house, right? Sag risings, you're going to be ruled in your first house, your auric field, right, by Sagittarius. Your auric field is big. When you walk in a room, it's, again, we can also kind of compare this to Leo risings. Okay, so Aries risings, loud. Leo risings, bright. Sagittarius risings, big. Okay, those are the 3 fire sign risings. Loud, bright, and big. Okay, those are different frequencies, but they can feel similar. Okay, so your auric field is big. You have to recognize this. You do have a natural sense of luck. What the key here is you have to know what you believe in. You have to have some sort of personal truth. That's going to be essential for your story arc. If not, what's going to happen? You'll see this from the celebrity examples. If you don't have a personal truth, if you don't have something you strongly believe in, right, that kind of is the compass for your adventure of life, you will come off as hollow. You will come off as someone who doesn't have a core foundation. And then that can lead to people not really being able to believe in you, right? And so I think for Sag risings, that is the key to your life, because you will have a natural knack of expanding everything you touch. There's kind of a Midas touch energy here. So whatever you touch will become really, really big. But if you don't have a core foundation of a personal truth, something you believe in, and it does tend to mean something beyond yourself, right? You believe in something. You will have a rough ride. And so we will see that when we get through these examples, but you have to understand that your aura is big. It's very powerful. And so you have to also check your beliefs regularly. Be willing to change your beliefs. Be willing to develop life experience and lived wisdom and keep incorporating that into your overall personal truth, right? But you have a very kind of powerful aura. Now, the second house of self-worth, right? Resources, how you manifest, how you bring prosperity and wealth to yourself. This is going to be ruled by Capricorn. So you guys actually do have a great way of building a legacy, right? Generational wealth is something that shows up with Sagittarius risings. Now, this can come in a few ways, right? Capricorn is one of those signs, right? Remember our Cancer risings? Capricorn 7th house, I said either the Cancer rising is going to become very wealthy and successful in their own right? And they kind of become the very financially successful partner, such as Cher, right? She's a Cancer rising. Or you're going to get the Cancer risings that marry into money. They marry into legacy, aka Meghan Markle, right? That's kind of how Capricorn works. It's either you're going to build it yourself, you're going to create something that is long lasting. Think legacy. Think something that you're going to pass down, right? Or you can kind of gain that through others, through partnerships, through marriage, etc. So I think with a second house of Capricorn, these, Sagittarius risings will come off as these fun-loving, adventurous, Sag, they're wildly optimistic. They have a great sense of humor. They are very funny. They're very gregarious. People are drawn to their kind of whimsical life, if you will, that they're always kind of on a whim. And things tend to work out for them. And sometimes they don't, but they can also take what doesn't work out and make it work for them. They have this like natural ability to just kind of make life work for them. And it's very, very inspirational to the rest of us who are like trying to figure everything the fuck out. And Sag risings are like, I don't know, I'm just winging it, right? Like I'm just winging it and I'll figure it out. Everything will be fine. And so it's this very kind of whimsical energy sometimes. But they're actually very, very money oriented. And so their self-worth is often tied, ironically, even though Sagittarius is not known for its commitments, although I think Sagittarius can be extremely committed, again, when they believe in it and when it aligns with their personal truth. They will be very, very committed to it. But before that happens, you got to kind of catch them while you can. Like they're on to the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. They're very, very fast moving here, but they're actually very money oriented. So your self-worth, for one, you can't tie it to money or success or status. That is going to be your downfall. However, it does help to cultivate the fact that hard work and really putting the effort into the things you really believe in and care about will pay off in a very grand way. But you do have that ability, again, either to kind of gain that wealth and kind of legacy through partnerships, through others in a sense, or by building it yourself. The key here is you cannot let money become your personal truth. You cannot let status become your personal truth, or power. That's the dangerous game here. Now, your third house of communication, your perspectives, the way you think, the way you communicate, this is ruled by Aquarius. This is again why Sag risings are so interesting, because the way you think is very unique. You might find that a lot of your ideas, the things, the way, the style in which you communicate, right? The way that you see the world is very, very unique through that Aquarius lens. Also, you will see again in some of these examples here, when you are using that really incredible ingenuity of your brain, right, for things that benefit humanity, for things that are for the greater good, you will see the most expansion, the most success, because Aquarius at the end of the day is a humanitarian, right? And embrace that kind of quirky thinking. You have genius ideas and you're kind of the only ones that can really pull it off, right? And this leads us to the fourth house, the first angular house, right? The core of who you are, your childhood, how you grew up, right? It's kind of what builds you from the inside out, is in Pisces. So there's something tough with that, because a Pisces fourth house, for one, you might have grown up in a childhood that could have been very wishy-washy, very unclear. There might have been very unclear boundaries, which is something that Sag risings can struggle with. They can struggle to understand boundaries, because remember, it's about big expansion. It can become invasive if you're not careful, right? You will develop this over your life, but you will have to learn boundaries. There are certain spaces your aura shouldn't be invading, okay? You have to know equally about expansion and restraint. Because if you go too much, too fast, and again, Pisces fourth house, your inner sense of self, there are no boundaries with Pisces. So there's confusion sometimes of like when to stop, when we're going overboard, when it's become too much, right? That is something you need to develop, okay? And you can really lean into that second house of Capricorn, which will teach you restraint. It will teach you about hard work, ethics, integrity in the realm of your self-worth. You need to have a core sense of self-worth. You also need to know, again, sometimes it will happen with money, when enough is enough, when it's gone too far. But again, that Pisces fourth house can create confusion internally. There can be a lack of knowing who you are. It kind of seems like you can chameleon with a lot of people, and you're not really sure where boundaries begin and end, right? Pisces also rules addiction. So you could have grown up in a household with addiction. This can lead to later in life, again, going overboard, being an addict in some way. Again, Pisces is a idealist. You can be lost in the sauce, especially when it comes to home and family. You can lack boundaries with your own children when you grow up. You could have grown up with very little boundaries. Again, there's confusion there. Pisces is also the sign of endings. There's a lot of grief with Pisces, right? It's very existential. You could have had a death early on in your life, in your family, that really changed who you are, right? But you have a deep sense of empathy, a deep sense of love. This kind of links with the Aquarius third house. You care about other people. You care about humanity. You're thinking about what's good for others. But again, sometimes you will have to work on boundaries and clarity throughout your life and this will always go back to the first house. You have to know what your personal truth is and what you believe in, right? Pisces, because of its idealism as well, sometimes you can have rose-colored glasses on when it comes to your childhood, or as you grow up and become an adult in your own home and family. You can have the rose-tinted glasses on and think everything is wonderful. You kind of create your own dream world, but it may not necessarily be real, right? And so this is part of that lived experience, that developing of wisdom that is the core of your archetype. Now, your fifth house of children, joy, your creative passions, how you express yourself into the world is in Aries. So these are real go-getters. These are real passionate people, okay? And especially if you have a creative craft, there are things you're super passionate about in life, things that really spark you and inspire you. You are like unstoppable. The Aries energy is strong. It's palpable. So again, for my Sag risings, especially with the Saturn-Neptune conjunction. Now, of course, check your whole sign and Placidus, whichever you prefer. But in Placidus, it could be in the fifth house, could land in the sixth, right? It could be different. But you might find that you are just ready to live life and follow your joy, follow what lights you up. And this is what Sages are very, very good at. Now, another thing with the fifth house, right? Because this is the house of passion, this is where the feeling of chemistry and magnetism happens. You can fall in love very, very quickly, and you can jump too quickly into it. And so that is something you have to watch as well. Remember, your first house is ruled by Jupiter. Everything is big. Everything is big. So you can jump too far, too fast, head over heels, this type of energy. You do have to, again, learn restraint. Second house, Capricorn. A lot of the self-worth building is going to come from learning when to slow down, when to have boundaries, when to have restraint. Very, very important. But you guys are go-getters, and especially going after what excites you, what lights you up, what you're passionate about. You're pretty unstoppable in that area. Now, your sixth house of health and wellness, daily routines, work, is going to be ruled by Taurus. So again, links back to Capricorn second house. You guys like to make money. You like to have some sort of on a daily basis, whatever you are working on, your daily routines, your daily work, you can be very consistent, right? Which again, a little bit paradoxical to the Sagittarius element, but you can be very, very consistent. You need a routine to balance all the intense energy, because where the fire elements land in your chart, it's very overblown, right? Sag first house, your aura is big, it's fast moving, it's excited, it wants to go from one thing to the next. Aries fifth house, full throttle when you get excited, full throttle when it's something you are passionate and creatively interested in, right? But Capricorn second house, Taurus sixth house, you're going to have to work hard. Not everything can come easily to you, and that is the lesson of being a Sag rising. You naturally do have good luck, and it's usually because you're very optimistic. You believe things will work out. You do have a trust in life that is very beautiful and kind of admirable. But you will have to work hard. You will have to put in the effort, and you should have a very consistent, structured daily routine. That will be very, very helpful to you, okay? Now, Taurus is also the ruler of the body. So in terms of your health and wellness, you're going to have to take care of the body regularly, okay? It does matter what type of food you put into your body. It does matter that you are caring for yourself, whether that's supplements, exercise, whatever it is, just be consistent with it. That's it. Be consistent. If you can hold consistency and you can be disciplined in a routine, you will thrive. And again, Taurus is the ruler of prosperity. So your daily efforts do produce abundance. You just have the knack, okay? Seventh house of relationships. The way you bond with others, the way you partner with others, the people you're most attracted to in terms of long-term relationships is actually ruled by Gemini. You need mental stimulation, right? Gemini and Sag are sister signs. They are very similar in some ways, but very different in others, right? Sagittarius wants to have the lived real life experience. Again, they're looking for something to believe in. They're looking for that personal truth, that spiritual compass to kind of guide them through life. Gemini is just here to kind of try everything on for size. Like, they'll say shit they don't believe in all the time. That's just the way of Gemini, right? Like, they just be saying shit. They're interested in lots of different things. Gemini is not guided by some sort of personal truth. They are not guided by some sort of big picture, overarching belief. In fact, the Gemini's job is to constantly be learning, receiving information, communicating information, and honestly, constantly changing, which can drive the Sagittarius rising insane. But in many ways, you're attracted to that. You actually do really well with people who are not afraid to change their minds, are not afraid to pivot, change directions, learn something new, right? The mental stimulation is actually, perfect for you. And in many ways, people might be interacting with you through that seventh house, through that lens of Gemini, right? Like, Sag risings are very, very social creatures. They love the kind of socializing of Gemini in that seventh house. They love, the gathering of information. What you will have to watch out for is if you're engaging in relationships through that seventh house of Gemini in the shadow state, which means you are an inconsistent partner, you are flighty, flaky, that's not going to bode well, right? Watch gossip. Watch the gossip. Don't say things that you don't mean. Don't say things that you don't believe in. That's going to come back to bite you in the ass. So what you do want to do is, through that seventh house, engage with the world and with others in that fun, light-hearted way, right? And that is what is interesting. So actually you can attract people to you by moving into that lightheartedness, sharing and communicating information, things you find interesting, right? But don't always feel like you have to preach to people, like you have to have them believe in the same things you believe. You would actually benefit from really engaging in relationships that challenge your beliefs, that challenge your personal truth, right? I don't know if you heard that thunder, but because this keeps that first house of self evolving constantly. Right? Again, you're going to have to constantly check your beliefs and your personal truths. Do they match up to your lived experience, right? Are you kind of in cognitive dissonance where you're pushing away information and you're pushing away knowledge because it creates friction with what you believe? Be open. Be open to change. Be open to learning new things. And that's going to come through the 7th house of relationships, okay? Now, the 8th house of the deep dive, the secret self, right? This is where we do deep transformations. We face our fears, our traumas, our wounds. It's the deepest core part of self that's really raw. It's the things we deeply care about. And in the 8th house, this is ruled by Cancer. Mother wounds. Deep, deep mother wounds have to be healed here. Again, we look back to the Pisces 4th house. Now, Pisces is childhood in general, so it can link to both parents, but it often is greatly tied to the mother. So sometimes something about the relationship with the mother was confusing. There was a lack of boundaries. Something's unclear there. And this can create a deep mother wound in the 8th house. Maybe you had trouble trusting your mother. Maybe you didn't receive that type of nurturing and motherly essence in childhood. Maybe it was more of like a friendship dynamic. Maybe one of the parents was an addict, right? Or wasn't present, or just wasn't fully there. Maybe there was a loss of a parent, right? And so this creates this kind of this very deeply sensitive 8th house where there can be mother wounds. There can be a deep fear of loss of people closest to you. But also there is a incredible sensitivity here. So what can also happen is you can take things very personally. It can really trigger the emotional body. I would say the fears and the wounds here with an 8th house of Cancer is the fear of losing the people that you love. That would be the big trigger. Again, linking back to that Pisces 4th house. And you can take things very personally. You can be very emotionally reactive when those wounds get triggered because Cancer is volatile emotionally. When the things and the people that they love are threatened, that is when you will see the mama bear. That is when all hell will break loose because Cancer deeply cares about the people and the things closest to it. And when that is threatened, it's a no-go for them. So you can be deeply volatile, emotionally volatile, and you have to watch that. But on the beautiful side, you are very psychic. Like you feel things and sense things that other people in the room are not picking up. Again, Pisces 4th house. These are deeply, deeply sensitive people and actually very psychic people. They just aren't coming off that way. But when you can develop that, you are so in tune with not only yourself and in tune with these little intuitive nudges, right? Again, which can really be expressed well through that 3rd house of Aquarius. Following your intuition, following those kind of gut feelings, if you will, and really, putting focus on what you love and who you love. And again, that becomes part of the personal truth, right? But you have to watch that emotional volatility. Now, the 9th house, which is ruled by Sagittarius, this is our beliefs. This is our expansion. This is our higher learning. This is where we're seeking something beyond ourselves. This is ruled by Leo. This is why a lot of Sag risings have that larger than life presence, because the 9th house is that house ruled by Sag. So it's where there's a lot of expansion. This can be expansion in learning. This can be expansion in life experiences. This can be expansion, again, in that seeking kind of thing of like, We're seeking knowledge. We're seeking a personal truth. We're seeking to learn about the world, right? Sagittarius is a global sign, right? It's not linked to just one culture. So you will find a lot of Sag risings also love different cultures. They love people from different cultures. Gemini 7th house, right? They love people who have different experiences from them. They like to learn in that way. They might be interested in languages. They might be interested in traveling and meeting people from other backgrounds. Like, they love that kind of stuff. That 9th house ruled by Leo. One thing you have to watch is arrogance, thinking that you know more than everybody else. Okay. Now, on the positive side of this, these are why these people, this hair, tend to be very famous and very well known around the world. They just have that star quality in the 9th house where they are very public. They are very seen on the world stage. They are very big. Okay. Now, this can also mean you can be very well liked, very well loved in many ways, right? There's just this warmth and this love that emanates from that 9th house. But again, watch that arrogance. You don't know more than everybody else. And again, linking back to the 1st house, you will constantly have to check your beliefs. Sagittariuses can be know-it-alls because they have a lot of experience. Okay, they're one of those people that they will try everything. Similar to Gemini, but Sagittarius, Gemini is more trying everything in terms of information mentally. Like they'll play around with all different types of ideas and information and thoughts and kind of try it on for size. Sagittarius is actually going out into the world and having that actual experience. So they're well-rounded people, but you have to watch that part of it, right? 10th house of success, of achievement, of purpose, right? Which can be career, but often is just you are very well recognized for this thing. This is where you find a sense of deep inner purpose, right? That's going to be ruled by Virgo. So these people are perfectionists and they are very sensitive to criticism, okay? Cancer 8th house, right? Criticism is very tough for them. If they are not seen as perfect, it is very tough for them. This comes from that 2nd house Capricorn, which is a workaholic, great work ethic, 6th house Taurus. These are hard workers. They are consistent. They will put in that effort. But that 10th house of of Virgo means that they are often well recognized for being masters of their craft, for being perfect in some way. They have perfected something. They have done something really, really well, right? And Virgo being that sign, right, of purity, they can often be seen as well for these very pure people, because in many ways they are. Pisces 4th house, they have a pure heart. They really, really do have a pure heart. It is when they don't have a core inner knowing of their personal truth and what they believe in that they get led astray in different ways, right? But they can also be very well known. Virgo is about health and wellness. Virgo is about precision, detail, right? And so they can often be known for that as well. Like they're very detail oriented. They're very precise. They can also be known, post mortis, when they die, they can be known for something to do with their health and wellness. Now their 11th house, okay, which is the impact they make on the world, the gifts they bring to the collective consciousness, their uniqueness. Now the 11th house also brings fame sometimes, right? Similar to the 9th. The 9th is just very visible. You're really well known. You are just big, right? You're known everywhere. The 11th house is the impact that we're actually making, right? It is our effect on the collective consciousness. And this is in Libra. So these people will be known for their connections. They have a lot of connections. They might also be very well known for their marriages or partnerships. Similar to my Libra risings. So sad for us, right? Just kidding. Where we kind of, because of our Venus archetype and our Aries 7th house, a lot of the Libra risings, it really felt like who they are got lost in the shuffle, and everything became about their relationships, and who they are kind of was in the background, right? But this can be similar with the 11th house here, where what they do bring to the collective is that they are very diplomatic. They're easy to get along with, right? We love Sag risings. They're happy-go-lucky. They're very mystical, really psychic, intuitive beings, and they're very unique. Again, Aquarius, third house. They're here to communicate their ideas or to act upon their ideas in the world that are very different. And again, if they follow more of that humanitarian path, they usually have a better outcome. But that 11th house in Libra, they are known for their relationships or their marriages. That might be something that became impactful, but they're also known for their kindness, their giving. They are seen as just really likable people. Okay, now what they have to watch out for here in that 11th house, similar to the 9th house Leo, you have to watch the arrogance with that. But 11th house Libra, you also have to be careful of trying to appeal to the public by just wanting to be liked and not really being real about who you are. Again, personal truth. Now the 12th house, which, as I've said in every video, the 12th house needs to be integrated properly because it is the subconscious realm. This is in the sign of Scorpio. Okay, so this is a tough one because the 12th house is the subconscious. It's also the house that links us very much to where we kind of share in the energy of the collective. And so a lot of the things we feel and heal and go through in the 12th house are not personal to us at all, but it's where we're very permeable, right? And so the subconscious can be a very hidden part of self. With a Scorpio 12th house, there's a lot of kind of unsaid darkness around these people. And again, doesn't mean that that's their fault or that they've created it necessarily. It's subconscious, right? But in some way, darkness is like attracted to them. And so the subconscious, right? I always go back to the movie Inception, right? When we're talking about dreams in the subconscious realms, these are things that are hidden. These are things we are not fully aware of. So they can be things hidden within our own subconscious that we have to become aware of. We have to heal. We have to integrate. But this can also be the realm in which we are very permeable. So we kind of absorb through the 12th house and the subconscious from everyone around us, from the world, from the collective, and without knowing it, we're kind of subtly emanating this into the world. And this is why sometimes people's 12th houses are really loud. Everyone's seeing this thing about you, but you're not seeing it about yourself, right? Or you're not seeing how, because it's hidden and you're not really dealing with it, you're not integrating it, being aware of it, it gets leaked out into the world. And it's subconscious, right? So this is a tough one because there's a sense of darkness here, which again, the 12th house is always a complete paradox to the first house. Not always a complete paradox, but there is a paradox there. To where the first house is so obvious, it's so present, right? It begins our story arc. It's our hero's journey through the wheel. And the 12th house almost doesn't make sense in terms of the first house, right? I see this with every rising sign. And it almost doesn't make sense because the Sagittarius risings are I think a lot of them very pure souls. But again, with that 8th house of Cancer, 4th house of Pisces, they can be extremely manipulative, emotionally manipulative. And this is something to watch out for. There's a darkness there. Scorpio is the darkness. It is everything that has been denied, suppressed, hidden. And it's almost like we see these people and they're so lively and they're so happy and optimistic and they really are go-getters in life and things just seem to work out for them really, really well, right? And they have this larger than life presence. But there's something lingering there. There's something we can't quite put our finger on that feels very dark, very hidden. There can be a lot of hidden corruption here. They can do a lot of things in secret and not even realize that it's secret. They can subconsciously have a lot of like hidden agendas that other people notice, but they think that they're being fully like, transparent. There's just a heaviness here. And so with a 12th house Scorpio, you really have to be careful in what you absorb, right, from other people. Now, Scorpio is the phoenix, though. So these people always have the ability, always, to resurrect themselves from the ashes. Always. This is a core part of their power, right? Is that when they do the shadow work, these people are unstoppable. When they really go into the cores of their fears, their wounds, what is hidden within them, when they really dive into that, they are powerhouses. Okay, they can bring so much bigness, just so much life to the world, but they're gonna have to delve into that shadow stuff. There's hidden pain there. There's a deep subconscious pain that lives there. And we can kind of see this with some of the examples here, right? So the first example I have is Kim Kardashian. She's a perfect example of, in many ways, the shadow of a Sag rising, but there are some light parts here. So she's larger than life, right? She lives up to this archetype very well. She is known throughout the world. She's one of the biggest names in the world. But not for the right reasons, right? Now, she is a 13-degree Sagittarius rising. So that is an Aries degree, right? So in many ways, she was the first to do a lot of things, right? She was like one of the first people to be, the joke of becoming famous for being famous. That is so Sagittarius rising coded. It's insane. You know what I mean? Like, just that Jupiter presence of like being famous for being famous. You're just big. There's no real reason. You're just big, right? And so, and I don't know, it's so spot on in many ways. So she was one of the first about that. She was also one of the first people to reach this level of fame and wealth, right? From reality television. Right? Aries is a pioneer. Again, we see the shadow there of that Capricorn second house. I think that she does not have a personal truth, and that is part of the problem. There is no personal truth, and if there is, we certainly don't know about it. We don't know what her personal truth is. We don't know what she believes in, other than money and fame. And that is the shadow of the Capricorn second house. We also see here Pisces fourth house. Her father was a Pisces. Robert Kardashian was a Pisces, in fact, and he passed, right? So there's a lot of that grief from childhood, right? There's a deep sense of loss. There's a very strange relationship with the mother, Kris Jenner, right? Who I think when we did hers, I forget... She was a Virgo rising. Yeah, she was a Virgo rising. So that means she had a Sagittarius fourth house. Kim's a rising Sag, right? Very unclear relationship with the mother, right? Pisces, there's something hazy going on. We don't really know what's happening, right? They've talked a lot about how she had a lot of affairs, the mother, and this was all kind of coming out, right? There are allegedly, right? I don't even think it's allegedly. I think that's actually exactly what happened. But allegedly, right, her own mother was the one who helped promote her sex tape. Okay, lack of boundaries in the home. That is total Pisces fourth house. There is such a lack of boundaries here between her and her parents, where she does not have a core sense of self. She does not have a core belief in who she is and what she stands for. Very, very bizarre behavior, right? I've also seen a lot of interviews with her talking about the fact that she has really struggled placing boundaries in her own home with her own kids. No fucking shock there, obviously, right? Now, she is ruled by her Jupiter at 28 degrees Virgo. I always talk about the 28th degree. It is a Cancer degree, okay? In her 10th house of success, recognition, achievement, okay? How did she become famous? Her mother becoming her manager, promoting her sex tape, getting her all these deals, 28th degree. That is a Cancer degree. That is the abundance degree, right? Okay, makes sense. Cancer in the 8th house, okay? Her and her mother kind of working in secret, right? It's a lot of this plays out like super obviously to me. Virgo 10th house. I think the other thing that she's really known for is her detail orientation. She is known for that. She was an organizer for celebrities, like she was Paris Hilton's personal assistant, organized her closets. She used to have an eBay thing where she is known for that. That's actually how she reached her first level of success, was through being a personal organizer, personal shopper, etc., right? That's very, very Virgo 10th house. She's also known for her precision and kind of perfectionism in her outfits, in her details, right? Everything about her house is, if you've ever seen it, it's like a museum. It's all minimalist. Every product she launches, this whole vibe is about minimalism and perfection and very muted tones. That is very, very Virgo. Okay. And that is where she has reached success. The Jupiter is there. This is where she gets the most attention. This is where she gets the most recognition from. Now, she also has Saturn in Libra and Pluto in Libra in the 10th house. So Saturn is karmic, right? But Saturn is exalted in Libra. So this is well placed for her because she gets a lot of good contracts and a lot of good sponsorships and brand partnerships. The Saturn really works for her in that 10th house. She has kind of good contract karma, if that makes sense, right? Now, she also has Pluto there, though. Pluto in Libra, the 10th house. So a lot of her deepest, I think, transformations, right, and fallouts have occurred through what? Her relationships, her marriages, watching them fall apart. Everybody's witnessing it, right? That's very Pluto, Libra, 10th house. Now, her Neptune, right, which I just think it's interesting just looking at that her Neptune's in Sagittarius. So Jupiter being the ruler of Sag, but the ancient ruler of Pisces, right? There's kind of that Pisces influence. So her Neptune's actually in Sagittarius as well, in the 1st house. And so there is this aura of mysteriousness around her. Again, it's a question mark, right? How did she get famous and why is she famous? Neptune blurs the lines. Neptune can be like glamour magic. It's an illusion. We see one thing, but we're really not seeing behind the curtain. Neptune in Sag 1st house, right? Already ruled by Jupiter. She is famous for being famous. It is very unclear why she's famous. It is very unclear what she believes in. She is really failing. What I will say is that she is really failing very, very badly in her Aquarius 3rd house. There is no thought, it seems, of humanitarianism, of caring about the collective, of doing anything that is really beneficial to humanity. That Capricorn 2nd house just seems to be really, really strong. Okay, the next example is Elvis Presley. Again, larger than life. Elvis was, and I think will always be, one of the most famous musicians of all time. He was a 12-degree Sagittarius rising. That is a Pisces degree. So Pisces is very tied to music, right? Again, we see that 4th house ruled by Pisces, addiction, lack of boundaries, confusion in the home. There was a lot of that, right? Now, he was ruled by his Jupiter in Scorpio in the 11th house. Okay, so Jupiter in Scorpio, he had a depth to him, right? There was but a lot of things that went on in secret, because Scorpio is kind of secrecy. It's something that happens very privately, right? Got seen by everybody on the world stage. 18 degrees is the diabolical degree. He basically got known towards the end, and is really, the secrets kind of came out of like what was really going on with drug addiction. He had a food addiction as well, Pisces 4th house. Confusion around nourishment and not knowing when to stop, not knowing when, to cut it off. So he died, and Scorpio is death, in a kind of a diabolical way. That is very Jupiter at 18 degrees. And the 11th house, it was seen by the whole world. The 11th house has a huge impact. I think that his death really impacted the world in a way that, really changed things, I think, to just see how big he became and just how everything kind of fell apart. He also had his moon in Pisces. So I think he's another great example of how this can sometimes play out, but nonetheless, he made a huge impact on the world. Princess Diana. Okay. She's the best example I have of living this story arc. I think, in the highest way possible, right? Okay. Now she was an 18 degree Sag rising. Now again, 18 degrees is a Virgo degree. It's known as the diabolical degree. Whenever I see 18 degrees, there tends to be like, we're going to see something about death. We're going to see something very intense, or we're going to see something around health and wellness, right? 18 degrees Sag. She made such an intense impact on the world. Undeniably, Princess Diana is one of the biggest archetypes of our time, right? But we also know that her death was part of her biggest fame, right? Now she was ruled by Jupiter at 5 degrees Aquarius in the second house. So in Placidus, her Jupiter in Aquarius fell into the second house. What was she known for? Humanitarianism. The way that she cared about humanity, the way that she cared about people. That is what she was known for. That is also what brought her abundance, right? And prosperity in many ways. Like, she was the arm of the royal family who really went out there and did something for the people, right? She was the people's princess, very Jupiter in Aquarius. She also had the moon in Aquarius in the second house and Chiron in Pisces in the second house. So that's where I think a lot of the deep insecurities that she had came up, because that second house is the house of self-worth. She had Pluto in Virgo, fall into the very tail end of the 8th house. Also her Mars in the 8th house, Uranus and Leo in the North Node, and Leo in the 8th house. She was meant to be seen, and she was. Her private life became very big, very blown out of proportion. Of course, her death, right? Pluto in Virgo, 6th house. A huge part of what we know about her is how she died, and the rumors around that, and the secrecy about that, and what actually happened, right? But she is a great example of someone who I think lived it out to the highest extent, to the best of her ability. Another interesting one is Prince William, is also a Sagittarius rising. He's kind of has the opportunity in a way to live out this story arc in a better way, right? Now he's a 27 degree Sag rising. 27 degrees is a Gemini degree. So he's actually here to talk. He's here to tell us some truth. And he's not doing that, right? And again, this is where the Scorpio 12th house comes in, man. If they don't realize, now again, Kim Kardashian is another great example. Everyone can feel the darkness around her. She is oblivious to it. That's very clear to me. Elvis Presley, there was darkness that had absorbed in his subconscious. Maybe people were seeing it, but we didn't really find out till later, right? Princess Di, she had a lot of darkness around her too, but I don't think she was emanating it in a subconscious way. It was being drawn to her because she was such a light. But we see how that played out, right? things were going on secretly and hiddenly to ultimately kind of plot her death, allegedly, right? Prince William, same thing. There's a darkness here. There's a secrecy here, like with Kate's cancer, allegedly. But you're not telling us anything, but you're putting out AI videos of her. Like, this doesn't make sense, right? All these things that kind of played out with Harry and Meghan in the royal family, and these kind of rumors that there's this falling out between him and William, but nobody's telling anybody anything. Everything is going on in secret, right? Especially with Prince William. Like, I think Harry's kind of said his piece. He wrote a book. Like, that's his prerogative. Prince William should be speaking truth. He should be giving information to the public, and he doesn't. So, that's a problem. Jupiter at 0 degrees Scorpio. Again, secrecy. There's a weird energy there, and in the 9th house, right? So what is he most known for? Well, he's most known for his mother's death, right? Jupiter being the spiritual mother, 9th house is very seen, 0 degrees Scorpio, right? All makes sense. So he is very kind of like known for that. But I think what he's also known for is being an enigma. Like, he doesn't share a lot about himself. Again, Sagittarius energy is very upfront and transparent. The more that Sag risings lean into their personal truths and what they believe in and live that out, I'm telling you that compass will lead you in the right direction. But he's holding a lot back. Now, he also has Mars and Saturn and Pluto all in Libra in the 9th house. So that's beneficial in terms of like if he was to, become king or whatever, he will actually have really good relationships with foreign governments, foreign diplomats. He's someone that should be utilized. In fact, to make agreements and partnerships. He will be fair. He will be just. I think he has really good relationship karma, or I should say contractual karma with other countries, with foreign bodies, similar to how Kim Kardashian does have good contract karma in terms of her career, horrible karma when it comes to marriages, which is her Pluto in Libra in the 10th house. And of course, the most famous fallout from Kanye West, and he was a Gemini, and her 7th house is ruled by Gemini. She actually had a lot to learn from him. Now, moving on. Again, Prince William has Mercury in Gemini in the 5th house. He should be speaking. So you can see here that he's not living in the story arc correctly. Maybe that will correct itself. Brad Pitt was another one. 11 degree Sagittarius rising. That is also a Sagittarius degree. Or I'm sorry, an Aquarius degree. He was larger than life. Like, Brad Pitt was also one of the most famous actors of all time. I would say up there with Leonardo DiCaprio. Like, if anybody had to fire off a few famous actors, male actors, I think Brad Pitt would definitely be in the top 3 of that. Now, he's very famous, right? Now, as I said, you can also, with that Aries 5th house, fall in love too fast, make very impulsive decisions when it comes to relationships. That's exactly what he did. We also come to find out later, right? There was this whole thing going on with, again, Angelina Jolie is a Gemini, ruled by his 7th house, right? Just saying. So it tends to be there's a real love-hate relationship with Geminis, right? It just seems to be that these Sag risings have a karmic battle here with Gemini energy. But he had Jupiter in Aries, so he fell too fast. He went too hard. I think he acted impulsively. Now, his Jupiter in Aries actually in Placidus falls into the 4th house instead of the 5th house of the home and family, right? So he impulsively left his family, which at the time he didn't have children, but he was married to Jennifer Aniston. We also come to find out later that there was a whole domestic violence case filed against him by Angelina Jolie. So that's that Jupiter in Aries. It's impulsive, it's reckless, it's volatile. That's an example of that. Now, the final example I have is Elizabeth Taylor. Again, larger than life. One of the most famous actresses. And what is she most known for? I'll tell you. Now, she is a 13-degree Sagittarius rising. So again, that's an Aries degree. So Kim Kardashian, 13-degree Sag rising. Elizabeth Taylor, 13-degree Sag rising. You see any commonalities there, right? Kim Kardashian's been married, I think 4 times or 3 times. Something like that. Elizabeth Taylor's been married, I believe, 8 or 9 times. But she's ruled by her Jupiter in Leo in the 8th house. Love is big to her, and the 8th house, for all of its intensity and the shadow work we talk about in the 8th house is also about marriage. Okay, the 7th house is where marriage begins. So this is just a quick side note. When you fall in love with someone and you're dating them and you have an attraction and a magnetism and what we call the honeymoon period, that is the 5th house. Okay, that is where pregnancy, which is where we birth children, right? It's about sex, it's about lust, it's about chemistry. Okay, that's 5th house. Now, the 5th house is also friendship, right? It's when we meet someone, we vibe with them, we get on with them, right? Everything that's the initial spark tends to begin in the 5th house. Now, when we have a long-term friendship, a long-term relationship, or we end up getting married, that becomes 7th house related. Once you are married and you move into what comes after that, which is deep intimacy, the sharing of resources, the sharing of secrets, right? The merging of inner worlds, that is 8th house. So she had Jupiter in Leo. She had so much love to give and went over the top with it. But in that 8th house, she needed to marry all of them. It's just that's what she's known for, right? Now, she also had Venus and Uranus in Aries, jumping the gun, in the 4th house. She also had Pluto in Cancer in the 7th house. So a lot of, divorces, a lot of fallouts. We just see the pattern here. So I feel like with Sag risings, like I said, my best guidance is you need to know what you believe in. You need to know your personal truth. You need to question your personal truths as well. You need to test those belief systems. But ultimately, and deal with that 12th house in Scorpio, because that is an intense one. But you have the ability to make such an impact on the world that will never be forgotten. It's so impactful. It's so big. Right? And to utilize that in the best way possible, you can really change the world. So love to all my Sag risings, and I will be back soon with Capricorn risings.